Hey there, I'm Jessica, and this is Bookshelf to Big Screen. Today, I'm talking about the book, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews, and the 2015 movie adaptation. Fair warning, I'll be talking about specific details in the book and movie, so there will be spoilers. First of all, this is a great story. Jessie Andrews wrote a funny, heartfelt book, and Alfonso Gomez-Rejon turned it into a beautiful movie. The story is told from Greg's perspective. Greg is a high school senior whose mother makes him spend time with a girl in his grade who has been diagnosed with leukemia. Earl is his best friend, and the dying girl is Rachel. Earl and Greg met in grade school and found that they shared a love of strange movies and started making movies of their own. The movie followed very closely to the book, but there are a few small differences. I mentioned that Greg and Earl spend a lot of their time making movies together. In the book, there's a whole chapter listing some of the movies with a brief description and a star rating given by Greg. They made a total of 42 movies, and he says he retired after the last one because it was the worst film ever made and it killed someone. One thing that I really loved about the movie is that they actually filmed a bunch of scenes from Greg and Earl's movies, and we get to see them. They're really great. Greg also tells us that they made 42 films, but he doesn't talk about making the worst movie yet or having retired from filmmaking. In the book, Greg and Rachel actually have a brief history. They met when they were 12 at Hebrew school. Greg started flirting with Rachel in an attempt to make another girl he actually liked jealous. It backfired on him though, because the other girl said she thought he and Rachel were a cute couple, and just like that, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. But Greg ended it very quickly, saying he just wanted to be friends, and then just gave her the cold shoulder. Because of this history, it makes a lot more sense when Greg's mom wants him to hang out with Rachel after she's been diagnosed with cancer. In the movie, there isn't really any time to give that background on Greg and Rachel, so when his mom asks if he knows Rachel, he just says that they're acquainted. His mom says that Rachel's mom thinks it would be a good idea for Greg to spend some time with Rachel. Rachel initially does not want to see Greg, but his mom keeps making him make the effort. In the book, Rachel is annoyed that Greg ignores her all day at school but then keeps calling her and asking her to hang out. Finally, he tells her that he's been ignoring her because she broke his heart when they were 12. He says that he believed that she liked someone else. So she finally agrees to let him come over and hang out with her. In the movie, Greg's mom just keeps hassling him until he finally walks over to Rachel's house. She still doesn't want to see him, but he tells her about his mom and begs her to do him the favor of letting him hang out with her so that his mom will stop nagging him. Early in the story, Greg talks about carefully cultivating his invisibility in high school. He is part of all cliques and none at the same time. Basically, he's friendly with everybody, but not actually friends with anyone. One way he maintains this invisibility is by never making fun of anyone. In the book, Rachel thinks Greg is hilarious, and once he starts making her laugh, he keeps going as long as he can. One day, when Greg's crush Madison sits with them at lunch, she asks about his weird lunch, and he makes a joke about it being alien barf. He gets a few laughs and starts running with it, ultimately saying that a goth kid Scott is an alien. The girls at the table are all laughing, but Scott sees that they're looking at him and laughing, and Madison finally says that Greg is being mean. Greg feels very badly and remains quiet the rest of the lunch period. In the movie, during the lunch scene, Greg makes a joke that only Rachel gets, but everyone else thinks is really gross. So Greg panics and immediately starts making fun of the way that Scott is walking. No one laughs, and it seems like Scott hurt him. Madison tells Greg that it was mean, and Greg runs away. Mr. McCarthy is Greg's favorite teacher, and he and Earl usually eat their lunch in his office. One day, they try Mr. McCarthy's soup and they get high, but it was actually from some cookies that they had eaten before the soup. In the book, the high doesn't hit until the end of the school day. Earl realizes the soup was drugged and texts Greg to meet him at the parking lot. They were headed to Greg's house when Rachel texts. She's going to start chemo the next day, so they go to visit her instead. Greg blurts out that they're on drugs, and Earl is about to tell her about Mr. McCarthy's soup, but Greg is very worried about getting Mr. McCarthy in trouble, so he makes up a story about some guys in the bathroom forcing them to smoke. They later find out that it was the cookies that Earl's brother gave them that made them high. In the movie, Greg is in class when the drugs hit him. Earl still texts him, but they go straight to Rachel's house on the school bus for some reason. While they're on the bus, they're loudly talking about how Mr. McCarthy put drugs in his soup, and Scott overhears them. At Rachel's house, when they come clean about being high, Earl tells her that they had Mr. McCarthy's soup, and then Greg makes up a story about a guy hotboxing an elevator at the Jamaican embassy. Later, in class, Scott says that Greg's been telling everyone that Mr. McCarthy puts drugs in his soup, and while Greg is trying to explain himself, he realizes that the cookies he and Earl ate were from Phil, the drug dealer. It should be noted here that the character Phil only appears in the movie and not the book. In the book, Greg breaks his arm in a dumb accident, and it gets infected, so he's actually in the hospital for several days when Rachel is in the hospital undergoing chemotherapy. While he's there, Madison comes to visit with him and seemingly flirts a little with him and even tries a throwback to that alien joke from the lunch scene. She tells him that she saw Rachel was watching one of his movies when she went to visit with her, and she thinks it's great that he's been such a good friend to Rachel. It isn't until about a month later when Madison has the idea for Greg to make a movie for Rachel. When he agrees, she hugs him and runs off. In the movie, Greg doesn't break his arm at all. Madison finds Greg and Earl while they're shooting a scene for a new movie and tells Greg about her idea for him to make a movie for Rachel. There's no indication of Madison flirting with him at all, and when he agrees, she weirdly puts her hands on his shoulders. In the book, while Greg is in the hospital, his parents bring him a big book on colleges and want him to start thinking about where he's going to apply for admission. On one of his visits to see Rachel in the hospital, he has the book with him and they start talking about college. She's really into the conversation, but he doesn't want to talk about it, and she keeps asking him what he wants to study, but he finally asks her what she's going to study instead. She gets upset, and he realizes that he's just asked a dying girl about her future plans. Finally, she says she's not applying this year, that she's going to wait until she gets better, and Greg feels horrible, so he starts trying to make some jokes, but she just says to leave the book with her and go. In the movie, when they talk about college, Rachel tells him she wants him to apply to Pittsburgh State there in front of her. He doesn't really want to, but she uses her sickness to guilt him into it. He finally relents, but leaves his college book with her, saying that she also has to apply for college with him. When Greg and Earl start making the movie for Rachel, they really don't know what to do and try a bunch of different things. In the book, they try 5 different versions of the movie for Rachel, including well-wishers from school, documentary style, sock puppets, and stop motion. In the end, Greg and Earl just sit in front of the camera and talk to Rachel. They explain how they tried a bunch of different ways of making her movie, but nothing really worked out like they wanted. Then Earl gives her a very heartfelt message saying that getting to know her had been a real blessing for him. And Greg feels badly because he could only come up with the same cookie cutter message of, "Get well, I believe in you." In the movie, they pretty much try the same styles for Rachel's movie, minus the sock puppets. Their attempt at stop motion is much better, and it ends up being the final movie. In both the book and movie, Greg gets mad that Earl tells Rachel about the movie because he wanted it to be a surprise, and they fight. In the movie, they don't make up until the very end of the story, so Earl leaves a note with a recording of his message telling Greg that he's out. Greg's personal message to Rachel was filmed, but was ultimately cut from the film. You can see it in the deleted scenes, And with director Alfonso Gomez-Rejon's commentary, you're able to understand why he decided to ultimately cut it from the movie. In the book, they took all their attempts and combined them together for one weird, confusing movie. Greg wasn't with Rachel when she watched it. She tells him that she thought it was good, just not as good as some of his other movies. But then Rachel's mom sees it and tells Greg's mom about it, and they get the principal to show it to the entire school. Greg and Earl don't know anything about it until they're called up on stage and the principal tells everyone how proud they all are of them for doing something so nice. In the movie, prom is happening when Rachel is back at the hospital. Greg shows her the movie that he made for her, and it's weird, but also really moving. It's a very Greg Gaines film. While they're watching the movie, something happens to Rachel. It's not exactly clear what, and she ends up going into a coma and dying just a few hours later. I think it's a very touching and powerful scene. In the book, Greg goes to visit Rachel in the hospital for the last time with his mom. Rachel is sleeping and they sit in the hall crying. His mom tells him that she's sorry that she made him spend time with Rachel in the first place. He tells her she should be sorry about showing the entire school his movie. This is the last time they see Rachel, and they weren't there when she passed. Well, I think that about wraps it up. That's my recap on Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews and the 2015 movie adaptation. I highly recommend both the book and the movie. Was there anything you particularly liked or disliked about this book or movie? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, please click like and be sure to click subscribe to see my next video. Thanks for watching.